guys, it's Will again from White River Paintball. I've had a lot of new players asking me how to clean their markers and disassemble their markers and how to oil their markers.
Let's get started.
What I've got before us today is a Tippmann Cronus Basic that is pretty much all taken apart. I've got the barrel unscrewed, the foregrip removed, the sights removed, and all the screws removed. The screws can be found on these locations on the marker. Here, here. There is a Phillips head screw on the back on the grip right here. Make sure you remove that as well. I've spent about an hour trying to figure out why the gun won't come apart. It's that screw hidden on the other side of the body. So make sure you remove that. All right. For today's marker, we're going to be using a 1/8 inch Allen key. We are going to be using a Phillips head screwdriver. And we are going to be using our paintball marker oil. All right. So with all the screws removed, let us take apart the marker. So we're going to go ahead and jump on into this marker and talk about where you need to be looking at to clean specifically. Now this paintball marker is very similar to a lot of Tippmann's other markers. So if you have a Tippmann 98 Custom, Tippmann 98 ACT, Alpha Black, Project Salvo, Bravo Elite, Sierra 1, any of those markers will be very, very similar to this one. So feel free to use this as a guide to maintain those as well. So the first thing I'm doing when I take apart this marker is I'm removing the trigger spring, the Sear spring, and the rear guide spring. These springs put a lot of tension on certain parts, and while I'm working on it, I like to remove these because they could, come loose and shoot across somewhere across the pro shop. All right, so when you open it up, you're going to notice your trigger assembly, your front bolt, your rear bolt, your power tube, your detent, of course your gas line. The place where you're probably going to see the most accumulation of dirt and paint is going to be on your front and your rear bolts. So we're going to go ahead and take these apart and get into them. What I like to do to remove these bolts from the marker is remove the linkage arm and then just slide the rear bolt out and the front bolt out. Very, very simple stuff here. Okay. Right here in this main channel on both the back half and the front half of the gun, you want to make sure that this area is really clean. You can just clean this out with a paper towel or any sort of shop rag. This is what we use inside our shop. You want to make sure that any sort of channel where the front bolt or the rear bolt that is moving through in the gun, that it is clean and free of any paint or debris. And the same thing goes for your rear bolt. You want to make sure that this does not have any dirt inside of it or on the outside of it. Let me grab this plunger out of here. You want to make sure all these parts are nice and clean. You want to make sure that your O-ring on the front of the bolt is in good condition. Otherwise, you might have some other issues. So let's go ahead and get this. Obviously, this marker is brand new, so it won't need any sort of cleaning, but we will lubricate it afterwards, which we'll show you how to do. So that pretty much covers the rear bolt and the rear section of the marker. And now we'll cover the front section. This is the front bolt. You want to make sure that the outside of this bolt is very, very clean, but you also want to make sure that the inside of the bolt is very, very clean. A lot of paint can accumulate on the power tube right here, and as this bolt slides through, you will get paint and dirt on the inside of it, so you want to make sure it's very clean. Once again, you can do that by taking a paper towel or a washcloth and running it through there. And lastly, you want to make sure that your detent is clean. Your detent is this orange latch right here. This is what prevents your paintballs from rolling down the barrel before you fire the gun. So you want to make sure that this doesn't have any paint or dirt on the outside of it, and you want to make sure that there isn't any paint in this little crack right here, so that way the latch can stay up and keep the paintballs in place before they're fired. All right. So that is pretty much the basic rundown of what you need to look at and where you should be cleaning your marker. As far as oil goes, what I like to do, I use Exalt Vitamin O oil. You can use Gold Cup, you can use any sort of marker oil. I highly recommend that you only use paintball marker oil in paintball markers. You do not want to be using any sort of actual firearm oil. You do not want to use transmission fluid. I've seen people use that. And the reason being is because a lot of those lubricants have solvents in them. Solvents like to eat away at your silicone O-rings inside your valve and on the backside of your bolt. As far as lubricating goes, what I like to do is I like to put 2 drops on just the far side of the bolt, and then 2 drops on the near side of the bolt, right on the O-ring. And then for the front bolt, it is the same thing. I just put 2 drops on the other side of the bolt, slide the bolt on, and put 2 drops on the front O-ring. This front bolt is made out of a very common material in paintball markers called Delrin. Delrin really loves oil, so do not be afraid to give it a generous amount of oil. All right, so we're just going to quickly put this marker back together. Put our Sear back in place, our Sear spring. All right, put our trigger spring back in. You do not want to get these springs mixed up, otherwise you will have some issues. You can tell that the trigger spring is the trigger spring because it is a little bit softer than the Sear spring. It's a little bit thinner as well, a little bit longer. On some of the older markers, the Sear spring will be colored a different color. It'll actually be green. Alrighty. So when I put this back together, what I like to do is I like to keep my safety on this half of the body, and I like to line up the bolt handle with your guide window. But before we do that, we are going to put our rear drive spring back in. And this O-ring right here is just a buffer O-ring. It just floats right on the spring. It does not need to make a seal. All right, and then what I like to do is I like to keep my safety in this half of the paintball marker. And then what I do is I line up the cocking handle with this window, and then I line up the safety with the hole on the receiving end of the marker. It should go all right back into place. And it did. There we go. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed watching these videos, please let us know down in the comments below. If you're interested in this sort of thing, once again, please let us know. And stay tuned for more videos.